Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat and welcome back to my channel. Magagandang balita mula sa ating Presidenteng Bongbong Marcos habang siya ay nasa USA. Una rito, US-based firm to put up first Philippine call center in Iloilo. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. called business process outsourcing company Atento's plan to establish its first call center in the Philippines a step in the right direction as Filipinos speak and write the best English. Isa pang good news, US firms to hire 75,000 Filipino seafarers. US firms are set to hire some 75,000 Filipino seafarers in the next 3 to 4 years. Ilan lang po yan sa magagandang resulta ng pagbiyahe ng ating Presidenteng Bongbong Marcos sa USA. Meron po akong nabasang article sa Fulcrum Magazine online kung dapat bang mangamba ang China sa EDCA dito sa Pilipinas. Pero bago po yan, napanood ko po ang interview ni Karen Davila kay ex-Philippine Envoy to the US Jose Quisha Jr. kung saan ang sabi po ni Mr. Quisha na ang pagbisita ni President Bongbong sa USA is very timely. Yun po ay para lalong lumakas ang alyansa ng Pilipinas sa USA. At tungkol na po dito sa EDCA, dahil sabi po niya, unfortunately, during Duterte's time, we lost the momentum we started to gain during Noynoy Aquino's term. Dahil alam po natin yung EDCA ay pinirmahan noong April 2014. And the US was ready to help on the modernization of the armed forces. Kaya lang, Duterte put a hold on that and very little was done during the 6 years of Duterte. Alam po natin na mas pumanig si former President Duterte sa Tsina. Although kung tatandaan natin, sinabi niya na mag-jet ski daw siya papunta sa West Philippine Seas. Pero syempre, alam naman natin na yun ay joke-joke lang ng ating presidente dahil wala naman po naganap na jet skiing. So ang sabi ni Mr. Quisha, very timely ang pagpunta ni President Bongbong sa States kasi alam naman natin yung continued aggression of the Chinese in the West Philippine Sea. At itong pagpunta ni President Bongbong sa USA will send a very strong signal to the Chinese. Kaya nga hindi po ba naglabas ng strong statement ang USA? Isang advisory to the Chinese to desist from their provocative acts na ginagawa po ng China sa atin dyan sa West Philippine Sea. Okay, babasahin ko po yung article na nabasa ko. Medyo mahaba lang to pero kailangan nating intindihin. Dapat ba tayong mangamba? Magkakagyera nga ba between USA and China? At tayo po ba ay madadamay dito kung sakaling magkaroon ng digmaan itong dalawang superpowers na to? So ito po ay galing sa Fulcrum Analysis on Southeast Asia. Ang title po ng article, Why China Should Learn to Live with US-Philippine EDCA. This was published May 3, 2023 by Julio S. Amador III and Derek Balajay. And I read, early in April 2023, the Philippines and the United States announced the addition of 4 new sites under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement or yung EDCA. Immediately, the response from Beijing was swift. On April 6, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning shared that the development is really uncalled for. And on April 12, spokesperson Wang Wenbin expressed disapproval of the development. Days after, Chinese ambassador to the Philippines Wang Chilian echoed the same sentiment. This drew flack in the Philippines. Although ang pagkakaalam ko, nagkaroon lang daw ng misunderstanding dun sa sinabi ni Chinese Ambassador Wang Chilian. Tuloy ko po. Improvements in EDCA began as early as March 2023. A month prior, Manila and Washington agreed to accelerate the implementation of EDCA. Some $82 million was allotted to upgrade the 5 existing sites under EDCA. Even then, this development elicited no reactionary responses from Beijing. Why now? Signed in 2014, EDCA is a 10-year deal that allows the US to have a strengthened presence in the Philippines. EDCA increases the US's rotational military presence, specifically for joint training and exercises, and allows the two allies to conduct joint operations in responding to natural and humanitarian crises. The additional EDCA sites are not to be construed as US bases. EDCA is not a foreign basing agreement. It is a logistical agreement. More accurately, a pre-positioning agreement while ensuring Manila retains sovereignty and control over them. In the years that followed the signing, however, EDCA was criticized for not having achieved its goals sooner. There were delays in its implementation, mainly due to the Duterte administration's attempts to downplay the Philippines' relationship with the US. Chinese pundits are quick to dismiss EDCA as detrimental to China and its relationship with the Philippines. For instance, reactions cite how this development is a significant departure from President Marcos Jr.'s friendly overtures with China. Observers are quick to forget that Marcos's initially friendly overtures were spurned by Beijing. The president's high-level meeting with Xi Jinping in January this year belied the Chinese Coast Guard's assertive actions in the South China Sea. In fact, the CCG's actions in what Manila calls the West Philippine Sea have intensified. The coordinated swarming of fishing vessels in Whitsun Reef in March 2021, the water cannoning of Philippine non-military boats in November 2021, and the more recent laser pointing incident in February 2023 were all documented in plain view. A more geopolitical angle argues that Manila had inserted itself in the heat of Sino-US strategic competition. This is a false interpretation of historical antecedents. The Philippines has long been a US treaty ally way before such a strategic competition materialized between Washington and Beijing. China entered Manila's orbit of concern on its own accord. The Philippines has expressed that it does not want to be in the middle of any conflict and hopes that these unwarranted advances would not affect bilateral relations. Chinese observers cite fears that the EDCA would be offensively used in a potential military clash over the Taiwan Strait. These perceptions are not accurate. EDCA is not a military basing agreement, and the concerned sites will not be used as a base, that is, launch pads for Taiwan contingencies. President Marcos Jr. has already confirmed this. One must not be careless in the use and interpretation of security agreements between Manila and Washington. The enhancement and improvements made to EDCA have been long time in the making. Despite being a treaty ally, responding to a crisis in the cross straits is not monolithic and will not be automatic, contrary to Chinese pundits' fears. There is a process for determining the facts of the issue. In addition, no Taiwan contingency has been raised, discussed, or is being planned in any of the U.S.-Philippine joint dialogues, only that maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is reaffirmed as an indispensable element of global security and prosperity. The Philippines is not mobilizing any operations toward Beijing or Taipei other than the swift implementation of EDCA sites, which has been core to U.S.-Philippine strategic relations. EDCA is mainly defensive and strategic and will not be used as launch pads for offensive attacks. More importantly, the Philippine Constitution prohibits the use of war as an instrument of foreign policy. Beijing can be assured that the EDCA sites will not be used to proactively launch offensive attacks against China nor used to come to the defense of Taiwan. Inevitably, China will want to see a swift reiteration of the One China policy. The Philippines has consistently upheld its past communiques with Beijing and also upholds the One China policy to the letter. There is no change in Philippine policy towards Beijing and Taipei. More recently, the National Security Council issued a press release affirming the One China policy. Finally, Chinese concerns point to the Philippines' strategic move with the U.S. as affecting other regional states and that this puts Manila in an awkward position. This is false, as the Philippines finds itself in the crossfire of the U.S.-China strategic competition. It only practices hedging or balancing. To force the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries to choose between the U.S. or China is an incorrect mindset. Manila has partnered with both Beijing and Washington on important bilateral undertakings. However, Manila places a premium over its exclusive economic zones, and Beijing has not done anything substantial to reduce Manila's concerns. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo stated that repeated infringements on Philippine sovereignty and international law necessitated the strategic EDCA move. This is meant to balance China, not to plan nor advocate for an attack on Beijing on its parts thereof. Despite China's erratic behavior, Manila has consistently pushed for diplomatic avenues with its every action within the parameters of international law. Philippine government channels have all been consistent in reaching out to accommodate the Chinese embassy despite China's assertive activities in the West Philippine Seas. The Philippines has adopted new strategies to bring illegal Chinese activities into the light by continuing the issuance of note verbals and by physically documenting illegal Chinese behavior at sea. China, however, responds with provocative activities at sea coupled with its diplomacy by habitual gaslighting. Instead of lambasting EDCA, it would do Philippines-China relations some good to focus on one another rather than on focusing on third parties. Beijing has proudly boasted that the WPS conflict is not the totality of Philippines-China bilateral relations. Frankly, the same should be said of China's qualms about EDCA. Kung gusto nyo pong basahin itong full article, hanapin nyo lang po yung Fulcrum Analysis on Southeast Asia. At napakalinaw po dito kung iintindihin po nating mabuti itong sinulat ni Julio Amador III at ni Derek Balanjay, Why China Should Learn to Live with US-Philippine EDCA. Tama po ito. Wala pong balak ang Pilipinas na makipaggera kahit na kanino pong bansa dahil ang gusto nga po ni President Bongbong Marcos, a friend to all and an enemy to none. Kahit na binubuli pa rin tayo ng mga Chinese. Pero nakita naman natin na hindi nagbabago ang pakikitungo ni President Marcos dito sa mga Chinese na to. Although, papano kung bigla tayong sakupin? Kailangan natin ng malakas na alyansa with the USA. Na yung friendship ng USA and Philippines goes a long, long way back. So, ewan ko dun sa mga pro-China, mga anti-USA, respetuhan po tayo ng kanya-kanyang opinion. Makikita naman natin na si former President Rodrigo Duterte parang more pro-China. Pero the way things are going, kailangan po natin ng isang malakas na relasyon with the USA. Kayo po, ano ang masasabi nyo dito sa article na binasa ko? Comment lang po down below and I will see you next time. Peace.